You're listening to The Voluntary Life, where you can hear ideas for finding freedom in an unfree world. Visit thevoluntarylife.com to connect with the show and hear all past episodes. Here's your host, Jake.
Hi, it's Jake here. Welcome to The Voluntary Life. This is an episode about ideas for doing more epic things in life. I'd like to read you a quote from an entertaining book that I've just read by Johnny Truant, and I will put the link in the show notes. It's a free ebook called The Universe Does Not Give a Flying Fuck About You. And this is the quote. Most people think that they need to be tapped on the shoulder by the epic fairy if they ever hope to be epic, or if they're ever going to have the audacity to do something truly epic. But it's not true. Want to be epic? Just do epic shit. There's nothing else to it. I really like that quote because I know that in my life I have often waited to be tapped on the shoulder by the epic fairy. And I do truly believe that if you want to do great things, you have to simply do them. You've got to take responsibility yourself. I've been thinking a lot recently about what it means to live life to the full. I want to push my own boundaries about doing things that are truly meaningful and purposeful and have a high impact on my own sense of fulfillment and pride. Doing more epic things for me is really about doing things that you know you're going to be proud of on your deathbed. It's all very well to be really productive and be really organized and so forth, but nobody's going to say on their deathbed, I'm so glad that I maintained inbox zero. So I think it's really important also to look at how we can push ourselves to do more amazing things with our lives, to really take advantage of this incredible, beautiful opportunity that we have being alive. And that's something I'm really focusing on at the moment. I've been thinking a lot about it. So I would like to share with you some of the ideas that I've read about that have really inspired me and that I'm using to make a habit of doing more impactful things. I'm really interested in system building. I love building systems, especially if I want to make a change in my life. I think habits have such a huge impact on our lives that for me, whatever I want to do, I look at how can I build a system and how can I make a habit out of it. So here are some ideas that I'm using for myself that I've found insightful, and I hope they're also useful or interesting for you. The first idea that I find really inspiring comes from David Allen, who wrote Getting Things Done. And I've talked about Getting Things Done, or GTD, a lot in other podcasts. I'm really inspired by lots of aspects of that approach. But the one that I think is most relevant for this question of doing more epic things is the idea of looking at what the best possible version of anything that you want to do would be. And the idea is really to set your sights high and to try and think of, for any project that you're doing or anything that you plan to do, think of what wild success would look like. So not just, what the end of this project is going to be, but what would the best version of whatever it is that you plan to do be? And that could be something huge like launching a new product, or it could be something like going to the park in the afternoon at a weekend. But the idea is what would be the very best version of that for you. And I find that really helpful because it helps me to set my sights higher and it helps me push my boundaries for what I'm aiming for. So that's the first idea. I'll put links to all of these ideas in the show notes as well. Now, as well as thinking of what the best possible outcome would be for all my projects, I still find that there is a difference between some projects that have more impact and that are pushing me beyond my comfort zone more than others. And I find it really helpful to be very conscious about what those projects are, because it's so easy to get lost in day-to-day maintenance tasks and in doing stuff that's comfortable rather than doing stuff that is epic. There's a very interesting book which has inspired a number of the ideas that I'm talking about through other people. I haven't read it yet, but it's called Do More Great Work. And the basic idea of that book is that good work is often so comfortable and easy to do that it gets in the way of you doing truly great work. I've also been inspired by an article I read about a woman who tagged all of her tasks in her task lists by the emotional payoff that she will get when she does them. So, for example, things that are going to make her feel really proud to have done. That's a really interesting way of motivating yourself. I've kind of changed that a little bit in the way that I've approached it. And what I've done is to look at all my projects and simply tag those ones that are epic, so that I have a list of those projects that are pushing me beyond my comfort zone, but also I'm thinking about it in terms of the payoff to myself, that these are things that are going to be really rewarding, that I'm going to feel proud of having done. And I'm finding it really helpful as a way of prioritizing the really important things to me. The third idea that I want to talk about is one that I heard on the Getting Things Done Virtual Study Group podcast, and I'll put a link in the show notes, by a guy called Augusto Pinaud. And he talks about making time to do extraordinary work, and he calls it extraordinary time. So he goes into work early every morning and spends 1 hour working on extraordinary things. And for what that means is he doesn't do any of the projects already in his tasks list. He doesn't do any surfing the web. He doesn't respond to any emails. He doesn't follow up on any existing projects. He just does something that he categorizes as extraordinary. And I think that's a fantastic idea, because in the way that the Johnny Truant quote said in the beginning, if you want to do epic stuff, you've just got to do it. And that means you have to devote the time to it as well. And so I am devoting time each morning, like Augusto now, to doing the work that for me is extraordinary. And of course, this is going to vary from person to person. Something that for me is an epic project might not be one for you. Something that for me is extraordinary work, you might not consider extraordinary. And you will have your own views about what work really pushes you outside your comfort zone and gets you to do things that for you are epic. But just devoting the time each morning, I think, is a really powerful thing to do. The last idea I want to share with you is one that I find really helpful for motivation, but you may find kind of bizarre and weird, and your mileage may vary with this, but this is something that I find useful. I find it really helpful to be reminded of just how precious life is and how little time we have, and how inevitable death is for everyone. As a child, I remember very clearly one of my uncles joking that if it were possible, he would have a watch that would have the number of days left of his expected lifespan. And whenever he was asked to do something that he didn't want to do, he would just look at this watch and say, I can't, because I've only got X thousand days left. And I always remembered that comment. And I thought about it recently, and I thought that this is actually a very trivially easy thing to do these days. There are many countdown timers. So I have a countdown timer on my desktop, and I have calculated my expected lifespan. And of course, this is an estimate that you can very easily get from looking at your weight and height and age and so forth. You can find loads of sites online to calculate your life expectancy. And then, given your life expectancy, you can look at the number of days left that you estimate your lifespan will be. Now, of course, if I'm lucky, I might live a little bit longer than that. And if I'm unlucky, I could live for less time than my expectancy. But I find it helpful because it focuses me on just how precious this opportunity is that we have being alive. It's something that just catches my eye when I'm switching between applications or logging into my computer, and it helps motivate me. Maybe you think that's really macabre, but I find it actually positive and uplifting. I've been integrating these ideas that have inspired me over the last few months, and especially since the beginning of this year, and I'm finding it really helpful. It's really enabled me to focus on the things that I know are the most epic things that I can be doing. That's why I wanted to share it with you, because I think we all have the opportunity to do epic things with our lives. So I hope you find this helpful too. I would love to hear your ideas about ways to integrate a habit of doing epic things into your life. If you enjoy the podcast, I would really appreciate it if you could review and rate on iTunes. That would be a big help, and thank you so much for listening.
Thank you for listening to The Voluntary Life. If you have feedback about the show, please email jake@thevoluntarylife.com. If you enjoyed this program, please share the podcast with your friends or click the donate button on thevoluntarylife.com.